episode of Hyperfixation, the podcast, your weekly deep dive into the niche and the eccentric. Today, we are looking at a bit of an anniversary. It is the day of recording, actually, the 18th of August, 2026, is the 40th anniversary of Slippery When Wet, the Bon Jovi album that didn't start at all, but certainly transported the band into superstardom. And to celebrate that, I started a little side project a little while ago, which was actually a side project of another project that I'm working on. And I knew that obviously this year was the 40th anniversary, and I thought, oh, it'd be fun to do my own little remix of Livin' on a Prayer. Look, what Bon Jovi are famous for and what Bruce Springsteen said about specifically John's writing style was that he is the master of these pop rock choruses that nobody can help but just sing. And nothing encapsulates that like Prayer. It is not the best song ever written by any means. It isn't even close. It is a fantastic pop rock stadium anthem. That being said, it is this song that means a lot to so many people and just makes everyone feel something. And there's something special about that. And look, as it's an anniversary, it's the Ruby anniversary, I thought, look, I'll do this. Originally started as part of something which I will be releasing in another time. It's nowhere near done, so, stop asking. It will happen when it happens. It's just something that's chugging away in the background. But I knew I then did a slight tangent, a slight step off, and what I'm going to talk about today is the song from the ground up and how I've sort of made my version. Now, I'm going to be interested to see what might get struck in terms of copywriting. So there might be an extended version of this released on the Patreon of my little TED talk into the music. But also I'll be releasing the remix. So it'll be available on YouTube, and also it will be on, I'll also be releasing it on the Patreon. So you can download it on the Patreon and listen to it at your leisure. So as of now, if you're listening to this, it's on there. So go to the Patreon, go to the YouTube, check it out. But yeah, in terms of the podcast for today, we're going to be deep diving into my digital audio workstation, or DAW, for those of you out there. So for those of you who don't know, my background is music. I'm by no means a good sound designer. I make do. I've used a lot of different digital audio workstations in my time, and I've used a lot of different techniques. And it is very much like the podcast in that I produce to get results, and the working is very, very messy. So for anyone who actually is very good at all of this stuff, please don't come at me. I'm aware. But what we're going to do is we're going to sort of work from the ground up. So we've got here the finished track. Oh, let me just save it first, and I'll sort of go through what's happening. So this is ostensibly Livin' on a Prayer. Now, so the original is in 4/4, and there's also a 3/4 bar before the key change after the guitar solo, which is why that jump is a bit unexpected, and like it has so much energy, like they propel into the key change. It's because, there's a cheeky little time signature change. In terms of digital audio workstations as well, sorry, I'm using Cubase. This was a recommendation of Daniel Walsh. I believe Daniel Walsh was using Cubase. And so I thought, give it a go. He spoke very highly of it. In my training, I used Ableton and I used Audition primarily, just because they're what I gravitated towards. I got a bit of advice early on from a guest speaker to try as many of them as possible to see what works for you. Obviously, Pro Tools, and what else did I use? Obviously, Audacity. Audacity is one of the best ones out there, not just because it's free, but because of how versatile it is. So, as simple as that is, use like any of these things, use what works best. And Cubase, I've really loved. I've really loved getting to know as a bit of software. So can recommend. It's also pretty cheap comparatively. So I was on Audition and then had to scale back to Cubase, and it's great. I've loved it as a bit of music production software. So let's see what we've got here. So the original's in 4.4. Now I've done it in 4.4, but it's done a weird formatting thing. It's made sense. I promise. Don't pay too much attention to my tempo, but here we go. What I'm going to do is just isolate some tracks. So what we've got here is we've got the piano tracks. So I've affectionately named them after, I'm just going to, do some desktop rearranging just so I can do that. Yeah, I've affectionately renamed them after the musicians. So this is David. So what we're about to hear is just David's track. This is just piano to go over the intro. Let's play a bit of the chorus. Seem to be able to recognize it. That actually is playing over the solo. I've put a bit of the melody in there just to back it up. And also I've got the piano here, which is, I think, the key change. Yeah. Just the chords. Now, so I've used a few things on the piano here. So I've done a bit of EQing on everything. I've done EQing on everything just to get very particular tones out of it all. And I've got a stereo enhancer, which is actually a really good feature just to spread the sound, and then reverb to make it sound a bit ethereal, especially at the beginning. It just sort of hangs nicely over the rest of the composition. So, sorry, just to be clear, what I've done mostly, so I've done a mixture of MIDI tracks and live recording to sort of get the whole thing together. Everything was sort of built from the ground up by me, and a lot of it was played live, inputted, and then I've edited it later. So it's been a long time I've been working on this particular thing, just like a half an hour here and there over the course of several months. And so specifically to get stuff like the drums, so it's inputting the music using a keyboard and then been editing it from there. In terms of live recording, so stuff that isn't just being played through MIDI, is I've got samples from the original song. So I've got some isolated samples from the original song, which you'll hear. And I've also got some live guitar. Now, the first verse, I've taken a bit of inspiration. There is a band in Germany. I think they're German. It's a tribute band called Bounce, and they are fantastic. They are what they call themselves as the only professional Bon Jovi tribute band, and they very much are that. They're all amazing musicians and professional studio musicians, and they do these amazing concerts. And they did a couple over the past sort of 5 to 10 years. They've done big symphonic nights with a full orchestra and the band, and they've done all of these arrangements of Bon Jovi songs very much in a broad rock sense. So they've done this orchestral mix with the band sitting in the mix. And they did this really cool version of Livin on a Prayer, which I've always loved. And there's not a proper recording of it anyway. There's only some bootleg recordings of this really interesting take on the first verse where it's slow and then it builds all up to the first chorus. And that's the first time when the song actually kicks in. So that's the inspiration I've taken just to establish that. So I've got David, that's keys. David Brown's the keyboard player. Then we've also got a second piano running, which is just a very normal piano sound. Just playing chords. And so together, what does that sound like? So this is just like playing the solo. So together they've got a bit of it gives it a bit of a different feel. I've also got a bass, which is just playing, this is just playing the bass line. Let's play it. Just to underpin it all, it also comes in handy with the intro. So then on top with the high. In the original, yeah, so there's no piano, there is just synth, being played on keyboard. And I'll sort of talk about sort of the ground up in terms of what I've done. So there's a few parts to the song. So we've got, to the original song at least. So we've got the bass line, which is everything. So this is being played by Alec Von Such, who is the original bassist for Bon Jovi. And this is the bass line. That's the whole song. Or at least the verse, and then the chorus is it's a pre-chorus. That's the song. That the whole song is in the bass line. So we've got that. In terms of, okay, so there's the bass line. There's the drums, which are mostly backing up the bass, but just to give you a bit of an example, this is Tico. This is Tico on the kit. That's the drums. So that's the drum line, and that is backing up the bass. We've got as well, of course, now the piano is actually in this, in my version here, is not playing what the piano usually plays. I've moved that to violins because this version is essentially an orchestra. The concept is an orchestra with the band. So a lot of it was inspired by that bounce performance. But in terms of what the piano is usually playing, let's see what the violins have. It's here, I think. It's that's what the pianos are playing in the original, and then during the chorus. In the verse, sorry. So that actually is what the keys are playing in the original, is that high pitched. We've also got, so that we've done kit, and then guitars. Guitars are interesting. In the chorus, it's very simple what they're doing. Yeah, it's chords. It's power chords is what they're doing in the chorus. Now, in the verses, they're doing other things. Now, I've got here, so Richie here is my guitar. I recorded that on my Fender Strat. Here we go. Actually, in a lot of the verses, especially live, there is there's usually a ghost guitarist. So it's usually Bobby Bandiera is behind the scenes playing the backup of what the talk box is doing, which is a whole other thing. So that's the guitar riff, which is actually the bass riff, which then they use for the talk box. So the talk box doesn't come in, so we've actually got it playing at the beginning. We don't have the talk box playing with the bass to begin with in this one. We've actually just got the first appearance of the talk box is right here with the power chords. So that's just a sample from the original. That's an isolated guitar stem, so you can hear the talk box in the left channel, and the right channel you can hear the chugging away of the riff. Now, I believe they were both recorded by Ritchie separately and then smooshed together. And then we've got, of course, the more famous talk box here. Sorry, a little glitch there. So I was very conscious about when I was doing this version, when I realized I was going to be doing just a remix of Prayer, that is that I would need to use the original Ritchie talk box, because I do have a talk box and I play talk box, but there is something about this particular sound which is such an integral part of the original. Like, that's the bit everyone remembers. Other than, of course, the vocals. So it's like then it needs to be in there. Even if I recreate it, it's not going to be the same and just not going to work. Also, like, in terms of a talk box, if you don't know how it works, go read a book. No. If you don't know how it works, all it is a guitar that's plugged into an amplifier, and that amplifier has a bit of surgical piping into it. It's a hose. It goes up to the performer's mouth, which is next to a microphone, and it plays into their mouth, and then the performer uses their mouth to make those sounds. So ostensibly, this is Ritchie. The guitar is using the cavern of his head as an amplifier. So that's as much Ritchie's voice as anything. We then, of course, have John's vocals. And also the backing vocals, the original backing vocals we've got in here as well. So we've got, let's play a bit. It's tough. Dreams are running away. Play a bit of the chorus. Gotta hold on to what we've got. It doesn't make a difference if we make it or not. So we've got here, you can hear Ritchie and John. I've done my best in the mixing to make sure they're both quite nicely balanced there, so you can hear both of them at the same time. Let's play the very first bit. Hang on. Once upon a time, not so long ago. So in the verses, I've got, to add a bit of drama to it, I've got a delay on, quite a heavy delay, as well as a few extra effects. Now, the stems that I've got, so the tracks from the original of the isolated vocal parts, have all the original effects on them. So I've not been able to get, like, obviously the raw tape that they have. They did actually a remix for the Thank You Goodnight documentary for the 40th anniversary a few years ago of the band, and it's great. So check out the Thank You Goodnight remix, because it's really, really good, and they've stripped the vocals right back. It sounds amazing. And so yeah, this is the best I could do, obviously, with the resources and money I have. And so what I've done actually is just lent into it and just made them a bit more in certain places, so made the effects really sort of pop. The whole track has come out very dramatic, nearly more dramatic than 80s glam rock, so we'll see how it goes. We got each other, and that's a lot for love. We'll give it a shot. Oh, we're halfway there. Oh, living on a prayer. So what this has enabled me to sort of do is be able to highlight John's vocals, but also make the whole composition feel really supported by the backing. And we'll just, of course, have a listen to this bit. Amazing vocal performance. Obviously, this all sounds, you can hear all of my audio mistakes in here, in all the mixing and all the bits where it's cutting in and out, and it sounds a bit messy. Because there's so much going on, there is a lot of room for error in terms of individual track nonsense. But in the final chorus, what I've done, just to celebrate this version, is I've included some live vocals, and just like as a nice little thing, it's this version has very much been inspired by all the times they've played it live. The song has really evolved over the years, and in terms of the way they perform it, of course, and recently, of course, at Madison Square Garden, they did their 8-9 show stint. And so it's a very different song live. They are a live band, which I said, I think, in the Bon Jovi ranking episode of the podcast. But we've got here to go alongside of the live, alongside the original studio vocals, some live vocals. So I've actually got this little Easter egg for everyone playing along at home. I've included a little yeah, I think. Hang on. So that's a little yeah, which actually is quite nice. And then we've got this little bit of a chorus. So that is, this is a live performance from Florida 2003, I think. And it's an isolated microphone recording. There is quite a bit of noise bleed from the originals. You can hear mostly the drums and the guitar in the background. What I've done as well is, similarly to the studio vocals, is lent into it. So put more effects on to bring out different aspects of the recording. John's voice sounds great here. It is, of course, they play live in a different key to the studio key. So they play a step down. So this is pitched up a little bit. And it honestly sounds great. It's not AI. Let's be clear about that. It is just a recording. It's an archive recording. So he, of course, doesn't sound like he did 20 years previously, but I thought it was a nice way to include it. But he does this really nice vocal opt-up. An opt-down, sorry. I've got no voice. I'm touring at the moment, so it's a little dire here. I might cut that. And so the original, of course, they stay on that first note. So together, it sounds really nice, and I've always liked the opt-down. So what does it sound like with all the original? It just creates a bit of a point of differential, and I really have liked it. So we've got a bit of John singing a live version of the chorus there, and then we've got the normal last chorus. The last chorus extended, and then we've got a bit of an add-on from John at the end, which is from the same live recording. Which is something he often says during Prayer live. So there was a few things. I wanted it to feel like a live version of it with an orchestra with John. And also there's an ending, which is based off what they do live. And it's just, to make it feel cinematic, dramatic, and what have you. But what we might do is go through sort of each section that I've got to show what's happening under the surface. So let's go core, and then we can compartmentalize from there. So this is core. So this is bass and kit. So this is the intro. Let's play chorus. Pretty bog standard. So just in terms of drum kits, so we've got 2 Ticos. This is a thing I've done a fair bit on this, you'll see, is I've taken one instrument track, split it, and done different mixing on both of them to get different sounds to then combine together. It's not the perfect system, but it's what I've done. So for instance, we've got 2 Tico tracks. This is the main one. And this is what the alternate one is playing. So in this case, I've got the second one just doing the big punchy stuff, like the kicks and stuff, to make it a bit more bassy. And you can tell the difference there. It's subtle, but it works. And then I've also got Everett. So Everett is their percussionist and backing vocalist who they tour with. So a lot of the time he's just doing a tambourine hit, but also we've got, towards the end, some cowbell for fun. Just as it needed an extra hit. So also there's some cinematic percussion as well, which I've got here. This might be that's a bit of fun. Just again to make it sound bigger than it is. So all together, and then just for bass we've just got Alec, but also sitting elsewhere on the bass we have Hugh. We've got Hugh, and so Hugh and that is sitting on. So Hugh is their current bassist, and he's been their bassist since the early 90s. So for most of the band's life, but he's sitting on bass FX with a drop bass, like a dubstep bass, for the first verse and the key change. So Hugh is playing exactly what Alex is playing, except it's strings. Just as another underlie to help the orchestra out, and also this is the drop bass. It's just something to pad out the sound and the composition. This is what the first verse sounds like. Sort of getting the idea of it now. Let's go through band, because that won't take too long. So the band, I believe, here is the guitars, the keys. Is that it? It must be all on this channel. I've still got bass effects turned on. Yep, so guitars and keys on that. So with core, this is what this pre-chorus sounds like. This is what, so with guitar and core, this is what the pre-chorus sounds like. That's basically Living on a Prayer. That's not too far off the original, in all honesty. But we've also got a whole orchestra. Now, these are using plugins, a few different plugins, but the main one I've been using is actually a free one. It's the BBC Symphonic Orchestra plugin with a whole bunch of different effects and splitting and all of that going on top of it. So, for a comparison, this is what that same section of music sounds like, but with the orchestra. So most of that is just sweeping stuff. But if we add in, let's add in the bass effects back into it. And let's also add in, not the full percussion, but let's add in Everett. So I'll actually play what the orchestra is playing during the guitar solo. So, what the orchestra does is gives it not only the epic feel that I was really after, but also a lot of drama and a lot of sort of sweeping, beautiful little just strengthens the whole composition. So let's, what shall I go through? Let's go through just like what the orchestra is, who's in the orchestra. Probably the intro is good. So this is the intro, and this is mostly using strings. So we've got there, what have we got? We've got, obviously the main thing you can hear is the strings. So let's just isolate the strings and play that same version again. So we've got here, playing, we've got violins. So we've got violins 2, so they're playing an octave lower than the violins 1. We've also got violas and cello. We've got violin 1s playing a lot, and we've also got some RAL violins for the beginning, for the tension, to recreate that initial synth sound. That's a bit annoying. This is what they're playing in the pre-chorus. I've tried to make them not play obvious stuff, so a lot of what I've done is taken what's playing in the keys, divided it up into 3, split it across 3 parts, and then if that works, then great. If not, then I'll alternate a few different things. But it's splitting up the music in I hope interesting ways. We've also got I've got a separate stem for short strings. I've done that so because I wanted a lot of the short strings to sit a little higher in certain moments. So we've got short strings. What are they playing? The bass line again. That bit plays a lot, of course. That's the bass riff again, just 3 octaves up, and you can hear that jump. Exact same thing. The whole song is the bass riff. Well, they play the bass riff in the intro and throughout a lot, but also then they switch to the piano part, which is actually, I guess you could call it strings. This is the first half of verse 1. Then violins come in. So what that does is, because the first verse is sort of, it goes into a fake halftime, where it doesn't have this same drive, but it has still the same. So these violins are basically providing the rhythm or the pace that the normal song is played to. It's this really cool thing, actually. I will give full credit to the Bounce guys for that, because they came up with that particular thing, and they do this cool subversive drum bass drop thing. Anyway, my version is a little different, but I've taken a big wad of inspiration from them. So that's what the strings are doing primarily, and of course, it's accents and for the short strings, and then these sweeping chords for the other moments. I'll talk. They're doing most of the heavy lifting in terms of the orchestra, but of course, no orchestra would be complete without some brass. Let's talk woodwind first. Let's do woodwind, because they're a little bit more interesting. So we've got the bassoon playing in the intro. It just gives an extra texture. The bassoon plugin is great that I've got. Obviously, I'll talk about this now. It would be amazing to do this with real musicians. Obviously, what I'm doing here is there's something that could be transferred onto sheet music, and then we could put it in front of real musicians. That is nowhere in the staple of my budget. This is just something I've done for fun and because I'm a fan. Anyway, so it's the bassoon. Just to give it a bit of an extra texture, we've also got flutes, which are emphasizing what the violins are doing. Then they go up. Just really nice. We've also got the oboe doing the bass riff, mimicking what the short strings are doing. And what are they doing later? The same thing? Yep. This is the final chorus. This is in the key change. So we've got here the bassoon and the flutes doing the chords, the bassoon doing the bass line, and then the flutes doing the higher chords, and then the oboe doing the bass line. And that's all it really needs. And I think brass is similar. Let's have a look. I've got more brass happening because I'm a brass boy at heart. So we've got trumpet, 2 trumpets, 2 tracks of trumpets, not just 2 trumpets. I've put a bunch of effects on them, of course. I've actually got a trumpet doing the bass line. Now, synth brass is always where you can spot faults, so I've covered that as much as I can in the mix. That being said, the horns sound amazing. If I could record anything with live musicians, if I could only record one instrument, it'd be the trumpets 100%. They're the horns. They sound great, actually, for a free plugin. With the tuba, they're just doing chords. So tuba doing the bass line, and then I've got the horns in fifths, I think, doing that just as a nice little separation. And trumpets sort of, the brass doesn't do a huge amount. It just sort of backs up everyone else. I think they do a lot more in the chorus and key change. They do a lot more actually in the solo. On its own, they sound the weakest, 100%. They don't sound like real instruments in any sense, and I don't really care. They blend nicely with the mix, and the particular arrangements I've got sound unnatural. But that's to thin out the composition a little bit there, so then we can boost it back up for the end. Look, all of this, especially all of the orchestra, is all happening in the background anyway. It's to most of the orchestra is involved up until the first chorus, and then it becomes a whole ensemble piece right until the end. So, look, there are so many moving parts with this particular arrangement. So, look, I'm just going to play the whole orchestra, and I'm going to play it with the core as well, with the so the full drums and bass, just for a little bit of the intro, so you can sort of see what I've got going on. Let me play the bass effects as well. It's got programmed to do a fade in. I'll sort of narrate as we go, so you can hear the woodwind coming in. And then the brass. So you'll see, if you're watching the video version, you can see the mixing desk and you can see the tracks that are coming in. So the strings. Then the bass comes in. So yeah, this first verse is much more dramatic. It's tough, so tough. Said we gotta. It's just orchestra. And I'm going to get the band to come in for the chorus. So that's what they sound like. I've also recorded, I did my own solo. Well, because we'll talk about Richie, because I've included also the Richie solo. So this is the Richie solo that I've used for it. It's the one just from the studio. Now, actually, interestingly, I had the same issues that I was using with the Studio John tracks, because obviously these are all with the same guitar effects. It's not the raw guitar. It's all of the post stuff that they've chucked on as well. Not just like sort of the raw. I imagine he recorded this on a Kramer. He used a lot of Kramers during that time, and he loves a compressor distortion overdrive. It would have just been what everyone was using at the time, I imagine. I also recorded my own version of the solo, but went with the Richie one because it just fits better. But this is my one, just for posterity, and I'll also include my own backing guitar. I've also included a lot of the talk box now. So over the beginning, we've got for the dramatic intro. And then this bit I've also got the... Now, some of you may have noticed that a lot of the original tracks that I'm using from the studio don't sync perfectly. And there are actually little gaps in between a lot of the original tracks and this one. So I've done the tempo of this deliberately slightly slower than the original studio track. With the orchestra, it was... And also the song, there was a real fine line of playing it fast and pacey, but it also becoming too fast and sounding everything was feeling rushed, whereas having it slightly slower just meant that everything was just allowed to breathe, especially in terms of those big sweeping chords, and the choruses and the melody and the choruses, everything was just allowed to breathe a lot more. What it means is that it's imperceptibly slower, and just means that it won't sync perfectly. So there are actually little gaps in between phrases. So I decided not to respeed anything where I could to preserve audio quality and allow for these little breaths in between phrases. Nothing you would even notice upon first listen, hopefully. But look, what I'm going to do actually, that is sort of the main thing. Like I could go into sort of the effects I've used. I've basically put compressors on everything. A lot of reverb, some very stylistic delay on some of the vocal lines, especially on the intro. I'm conscious of playing too much of the original track because, again, I don't want to get a copyright strike. But it provides a really sort of, again, it's for the drama. It's for the tea. So what I might do actually is play the orchestra by itself, maybe with the core, and maybe with John's vocals, and just see how that sounds. Strangely enough, that kind of works just by itself. I maybe because they released Prayer as a single after the album, so the album is the 18th of August. The single is like the 31st of October, I think. So it's funny. I don't really know. I'm interested as to why they bothered releasing a single after the album had come out. I guess it's just how music was distributed back then. It kind of works as an orchestral-only version, so I'm sort of tempted to release it as an orchestral-only version, but we'll see. With the band now. So there you have it, folks. That is sort of a bit of a deep dive into my reconstruction of Prayer for the 40th anniversary. Now, like, one thing that's really interesting, and, like, if you're interested, go for it. Like, there's a limit to what I can play and talk about in terms of music on the podcast. But there are, I might even link them in the Patreon post when I do it, is some of the original pre-production demos are really interesting of Prayer. Like, famously, John didn't want it out on the album and thought it was good, but it was weaker than some of the other stuff originally. Obviously, it's turned into their biggest hit, and that's something he, flies the flag of. He was wrong about that. It started off with, they had issues with the riff. So they had the bass line and the chords, because the song is essentially 4 chords. It is 4 chords and the truth. They had a story, and it in terms of lyricism is strong just because it tells a very simple story, but it's a universal story. Anyone can identify with it. And they had troubles with the arrangement because they didn't really know how to make it 80s enough. Or exciting enough to, it's a good solid song, but they had the melody, but it just, and the vocal line has all this energy, but just it wasn't matched. So, I mean, the talk box really helps pad the song where it needs it to give it life and give it that sound and give it energy. And then the vocals do the rest. That is, folks, my little deep dive. So as I mentioned, the song will be available on YouTube, the full remix. and it'll be available to download on the Patreon as well, which is exciting. I might even so it's October 31st is when the original single was released, so I might even do an extra, like an orchestral only version based off this track. But ultimately, that's Living on a Prayer. It is 40 years since Slippery When Wet. So thank you everyone for joining us. I am going to rock out. I'll see you all later. Have a great week, everyone.